The knock that changed everything. Jalen lived alone on a quiet alien planet. He was a human engineer who liked silence, far from war, noise, and cities. His small cabin stood at the edge of the forest, where strange, glowing trees whispered in the wind. He had no neighbors, no family, and no visitors. Life was simple. Fix the solar panels, gather water, repair tools. That was his routine. But that peaceful life ended the day he heard the knock. It was soft, almost like a leaf tapping the wooden door. At first, Jalen thought it was the wind. But then came another knock, and another. He wiped the grease off his hands and walked toward the door, thinking it might be a lost animal or maybe a falling branch. He opened the door slowly, expecting nothing. But what he saw made his heart stop. A little alien girl stood outside. Her skin was pale blue. Her hair was white and messy. She wore no shoes, only a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her big silver eyes looked straight into his, not scared, just serious, and then she said something he never expected. "Human, are you single?" Jalen blinked. He didn't know what to say. Was this some kind of trick? Was this child lost? Was she even real? Before he could speak, the girl continued, "My mom is really kind. You have to marry her." The sentence hit him like a rock. He looked around, half expecting to see a hidden camera or a group of pranksters. But there was no one, just the girl, standing in the cold, waiting for an answer. Jalen crouched down, trying to understand. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Mira," the girl said. "My mom is sick. We've been hiding. She needs help. I saw you fixing things. You're strong, you have food, you have light, you're alone. My mom is alone too. You should be together." Jalen wasn't sure if he should laugh or feel sad. Mira was so young, yet she spoke with such purpose. He asked where her mother was. "In the forest," Mira replied. "She won't come near humans. She says humans are dangerous, but I don't think you are." Jalen looked at her small feet, dusty and bruised. He couldn't leave her outside, so he gave her a warm drink, wrapped her in a blanket, and listened. Mira spoke softly. She and her mother had escaped something bad. She didn't know what to call it, but she said bad people were after them. Her mother had been a scientist before everything went wrong. They had no one else. No home, no food, only each other. Jalen felt a strange pull in his chest. He wasn't a hero. He didn't like drama. But this child, so honest, so brave, had come to him with hope. Maybe he couldn't fix everything, but he could do something. Mira looked up at him. "Will you come with me?" she asked. He nodded, not because of the strange request to marry her mother, but because someone needed help and he couldn't ignore that. They walked into the forest. The trees glowed faintly in the twilight. Strange insects buzzed in the air. Jalen kept close to Mira, watching every shadow, listening to every sound. After a while, she stopped and pointed at a small rocky hill. "She's there." Inside a shallow cave, he saw her, a tall woman sitting quietly with her back against the wall. Her arms were around her legs, and her eyes were half closed. She looked thin, pale, and tired. When she saw Jalen, she tensed, ready to run or fight. But Mira ran to her and hugged her tightly. "Mama, I brought him," Mira said. The woman looked at Jalen with sharp eyes. Not kind, not thankful, just tired and careful. She didn't speak. "I told him you're kind," Mira whispered to her. "Mother." "I told him you need help." Jalen didn't move closer. He spoke softly. "I'm not here to harm you. I can give you food, medicine, a place to rest. That's all." The woman didn't reply. But Mira looked at both of them with hope. She turned to her mother and said, "Please, just trust him. Just for one day." There was silence for a long moment. Then the woman nodded once. Jalen didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. His quiet life was over. A child had knocked on his door and asked for something impossible, but somehow it didn't feel wrong. It felt like the start of something much bigger. And deep inside, Jalen knew. This wasn't just about helping. It was the beginning of a bond he didn't expect. A knock had changed everything. The alien mother in hiding Ilari did not trust humans. Her eyes stayed sharp and cold as Jalen stood a few steps away. She sat on the cave floor with her arms around Mira, her body thin and weak. Her long white hair was tangled, and her blue skin looked even paler under the soft light of the glowing cave walls. She did not thank Jalen for coming. She did not ask for help. She only stared at him with silent warning. Jalen did not take offense. He understood fear. Many people had reasons to hate humans, especially after the wars. He placed a small pack of food and clean water on a flat rock and backed away without saying a word. Mira took the pack and handed it to her mother with a smile. Ilari touched the food with shaky hands but still looked at Jalen with suspicion. "Why, did you bring him?" she whispered to Mira. "He's not like the others," Mira replied. "He listens. He helped me. He didn't laugh." Ilari closed her eyes for a moment, breathing slowly. Then she spoke in a low, tired voice. "And what does he want in return?" Jalen didn't hear her words clearly, but he saw her pain. Her legs were scratched. Her left arm was wrapped in something that looked like old cloth. Infection, maybe. She needed care. "I'm not here for anything," Jalen said calmly. "You need help, that's enough reason." Ilari's eyes flicked to him again. She didn't believe him. She had lived too long in hiding, seen too much betrayal. She had learned not to trust kindness. Kindness was often just a mask for control. Mira sat beside her mother, her small hand clutching Ilari's sleeve. "He's strong. He has tools. His home is safe. Can we go?" "No," Ilari said quickly. "We stay hidden." "But we're not safe here," Mira argued. "They might come again. We don't have medicine. You keep coughing at night." Jalen stayed quiet. This wasn't his moment. He watched the two, a mother and child alone trying to survive. He saw Mira's worry, her need to protect someone much older than herself. He saw how Ilari pushed everyone away, even her own hope. Finally, Ilari asked, "Where is your home?" "Human?" Jalen told her. Not the exact location, but enough. A small cabin near the ridge powered by solar energy, with a water purifier and backup shelter. He had built it to survive, not to be found. That was what made it perfect for them. Ilari looked away. "They chased us from 3 colonies. I used to be a scientist. I was important once. Then they called me a traitor. They think I know something dangerous." Jalen didn't ask what she meant. Not yet. Instead, he said, "You're not safe here. I can offer you shelter. Nothing else. No pressure. No promises. Just a roof, food, and a chance to rest." Ilari didn't answer. She leaned back against the cave wall, breathing harder now. Mira gently pressed her head against her mother's shoulder and stayed there. A full minute passed in silence. Then, Ilari whispered, "One day, no more." Jalen nodded. That was all he needed. He returned to the cabin first to prepare. He turned on the heating system, cleaned the spare bed, and cooked something warm and simple. He left a light on near the porch to guide them in the dark. When he returned to the forest, Mira was helping her mother walk slowly, step by step. Ilari did not ask for help, but Jalen offered his arm anyway. She ignored it. Mira smiled at him, with quiet thanks. Her little legs moved quickly, eager to see a warm home again. She looked back at her mother often, checking every few steps. When they finally reached the cabin, Ilari stopped at the door. She stared at the frame. The smell of cooked food touched her senses. She looked at the lights, the tools, the care in every corner of the home. It reminded her of something long forgotten, a time before everything was taken from her. She stepped inside without a word. Jalen watched her carefully. He didn't speak much. He gave her space. But in his heart, he knew something had already changed. She had come into his world, even if just for a night. That night, Mira fell asleep quickly, curled up with a full belly and warm blankets. Ilari stayed awake longer, sitting by the small heater, her eyes watching the fire. Jalen sat across the room, silent, letting her think. In that silence, a strange feeling grew. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of something deeper. Ilari, once hunted, once proud, was now a guest in a stranger's home. And for the first time in a long time, she was not running. Ellery didn't sleep that night. Even though the bed was warm and the room was quiet, her mind stayed awake. Every small sound made her flinch. The hum of the heater, the rustle of wind against the window, everything reminded her of danger. She sat beside the fire, her eyes open while Mira slept peacefully in the next room. Across the cabin, Jalen rested in his chair, pretending to sleep. He wasn't used to sharing his space with anyone, especially not a stranger from a different world. But something about Ilari and her daughter felt familiar, like a life he had once hoped for but never found. He stayed awake, just in case. Not because he feared them, but because he wanted to keep them safe. Hours passed in silence until Mira quietly stepped out from the room. Her small feet made no noise as she came to sit beside her mother. Ilari turned her head, surprised to see her awake. Mira smiled and leaned against her. He stayed awake, Mira whispered. I saw him. Ilari said nothing. She looked toward Jalen, who kept his eyes closed, but his hand was near a tool that could be used in defense. Mira reached for her mother's hand. He makes me feel safe, she said gently. Do you feel it too? Ilari sighed. She had been strong for so long. She had trusted no one. She had hidden, fought, and survived alone. But something about this human made her question all her fears. He had done nothing but offer help. No demands, no threats, only silence, warmth, and presence. Mira smiled again. You used to smile before. When I was younger, you used to sing to me. Do you remember? Ilari closed her eyes. The memories hurt. She remembered singing, yes. She remembered sunlight on metal floors, laboratories full of hope. And she remembered running, screaming, hiding from the same people she once worked with. Why don't you sing anymore? Mira asked. I forgot how, Ilari whispered. No, Mira said. You just stopped when you got scared. Before Ilari could answer, a low sound came from outside. It was quick, like metal brushing stone. Both Jalen and Ilari heard it at the same time. He stood up fast, grabbing a light weapon. Ilari moved Mira behind her, all her senses on high alert. Jalen moved toward the door silently and peered out into the dark. The forest was still, but he saw something in the distance, a faint blue flash, then silence. He turned back and said in a calm voice, We're not alone. Ilari stood tall, her body weak, but her spirit ready. Mira held tightly to her hand. Jalen closed the door, locked it, and checked the windows. The small flash could have been anything, but his gut told him someone was watching. Ilari walked over and spoke. That light, it was a signal. Jalen looked at her sharply. A signal from who? I'm not sure, she said, but it means someone knows we're alive. Jalen didn't waste time. He activated the cabin's internal defenses, not weapons, but shielding and blackout mode. The lights dimmed, the windows turned black. Everything went quiet again. After a while, Mira fell asleep in Ilari's lap. Jalen sat near the door, still watching, still listening. Ilari looked at him and asked, Why are you doing this? Because someone knocked on my door, he said simply, and you let me in. Ilari didn't respond, but in her chest, something shifted. A piece of the wall she had built inside started to crack. She didn't know if she was ready for it to break, but for the first time, she didn't try to stop it. The night passed slowly. Nothing more happened, but something had changed between them. In the silence between shadows and fear, a new bond had quietly formed. It wasn't trust yet, but it was something close. And Ilari, once ready to die alone in a cave, now found herself thinking, maybe not alone after all. A sudden tremble ran through Ilari's body as she sat near the cabin's back window. Her eyes locked on a blinking blue light flickering in the far distance, high in the sky, too regular to be natural. It wasn't just a light. It was a warning. A signal from her past, one she thought she would never see again. Her face went pale as old fear returned like a cold wave washing over her. Jalen noticed her frozen expression. "What is it?" he asked quickly. "That pattern," she said softly, her voice trembling. "It means someone is tracking me. Someone from the Empire." Mira looked up in confusion. "The bad people?" Ilari nodded. She stood up slowly, though her legs were weak. "We have to move now." Jalen didn't waste time asking questions. He started packing gear, water, emergency food, medical kits. His mind raced. They had only been at his cabin for 2 days, and already the past Ilari was hiding from had found them. That meant someone had followed their trail, and whoever it was, they didn't come to talk. But Ilari refused to move at first. Her pride, her pain, and her fear clashed inside her. "I brought danger to your home," she said. "We should leave alone. You're not part of this." "You are now," Jalen replied firmly. "And that means I am too." Mira grabbed her mother's hand. "Please, Mama, don't leave him behind." The three of them moved through the back entrance of the cabin just before night fell. Jalen knew a hidden trail that curved behind the valley, under the tall rock ridges. It was dark, but safe, for now. As they climbed the path slowly, Ilari kept looking back. Her heart raced. She remembered the day she fled the labs, carrying baby Mira in her arms, alarms blaring behind her. She remembered her research, how it was twisted, stolen, turned into something cruel. That secret was still inside her. That was why they wanted her back. That was why they would never stop. When they reached a new hiding place, an old abandoned mining station built deep into the rock, Jalen sealed the door behind them. It wasn't perfect, but it was hidden and strong. There, in the quiet dark, Jalen gently helped Ilari treat her wounds. For the first time, she allowed him to touch her arm without pulling away. She winced as he cleaned the infection, but she didn't stop him. "You're lucky it didn't spread," he said, focusing. "I don't believe in luck," she replied, "only survival." Jalen looked up at her. "Then maybe it's time to believe in something else." Ilari didn't answer, but for the first time her eyes softened when they met his. Mira was already curled up in the corner, fast asleep, her small hand holding an old data crystal. Jalen noticed and asked, "What's that?" Ilari's face turned tense. "It's all that's left of my research," she said. "If they get it, they'll use it to destroy more lives." He nodded. "Then we'll protect it together." That word, together, stayed in Ilari's mind long after the conversation ended. She had not allowed herself to think about hope or connection in years. But now, in the middle of a strange planet, hiding in a dark cave, a human had offered her something no one else had, a reason to stop running. Still, she knew the signal meant more danger was coming. And this time, they wouldn't wait. Jalen was searching for something useful in the storage room of the old mining station when he found it. A thin, dusty chip hidden inside a metal container. It looked old, but its markings were sharp, clean, and official. As he turned it over in his hand, a small symbol caught his eye, one he had seen before in warning files from the Interstellar archives. It was the crest of the Zanari Empire's elite science division. His fingers tightened. Slowly, he slid the chip into his portable reader. A hologram flickered to life. Faces, documents, and titles appeared. Then a familiar one filled the screen. It was Ilari, but not the Ilari he had met. This one stood tall, dressed in high-level science robes, speaking at a conference. Her name lit up in bold letters: Dr. Ilari Venn, Chief Genetic Architect of Zanari Prime. The video shifted. Images of experiments, labs, projects, then security, logs marked Classified Rebel Threat. Jalen's heart sank. He walked back to the main room where Ilari was watching over Mira. She looked up and saw the reader in his hand. Her expression changed. Calm vanished. Her eyes filled with fear and shame. "You found it?" she said flatly. "I wasn't searching for secrets," Jalen said. "It fell from a box. I saw your name." Larry stood slowly. "Then you know who I really am." "I know what they say you are," he replied. "But I want to hear it from you." She sighed and lowered herself to the ground, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was once trusted by the Empire. I created systems to improve life. Stronger bodies, longer lives, perfect DNA. But they twisted my work. They turned it into a weapon. They used it on their enemies, on innocent colonies. When I found out, I spoke up. They silenced me. I ran. Mira was just a baby. Her father stayed behind to help me escape. He never made it." She paused, eyes fixed on the floor. "They called me a traitor. They said I had stolen secrets. They hunted me like a criminal." Jalen was silent for a moment. Then he said, "And yet you kept running, not for power, not to hide your guilt, but to protect her." Larry looked at him with tired eyes. "You don't understand. I'm not safe to be around. They'll come again. And when they do, you could be killed." "I don't care," Jalen said firmly. "What you did back then doesn't make you a monster. What you're doing now makes you a mother." Larry's lips trembled. It had been years since anyone had seen her as more than a fugitive. But Jalen looked at her as if she was still worth something. Mira stirred in her sleep and mumbled something. Larry leaned down and covered her with a blanket. "She's everything I have," she whispered. "And now," Jalen said, "you both have me." Just then, the alarm from Jalen's scanner gave a soft beep, a coded signal. It wasn't the same as before, but it wasn't friendly either. Larry stood quickly. "They're closer. We have hours, maybe less." Jalen didn't flinch. "Then we make those hours count." Larry watched him as he began setting traps at the entrance. Her heart beat fast, but not with fear. For the first time, it was something else. Someone knew the worst part of her, and still chose to stay. And that, more than anything, shook her to the core. The air around the old mining station shifted, too still, too quiet. Jalen felt it before the alarm sounded. Something was wrong. He placed his hand on the side of the rock wall and felt a faint tremor, almost like a heartbeat. Not from nature, from movement, from something coming closer. Then a sharp warning signal blinked red on his device. They were no longer being watched, they were being hunted. Jalen rushed to Larry. "They've found us," he said. "2 incoming life forms, not animals, armed." Larry stood without hesitation. She looked stronger now, despite the pain in her leg and the fear in her heart. "Then we fight." She didn't mean it as a request. She meant it as a promise. Mira hid behind the supply crates, clutching her mother's data crystal like it was her life. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just watched as Jalen and Larry prepared to face what was coming. Jalen activated the traps he had set earlier. Small defense drones powered up. The walls around the station began to glow faintly with shielding energy. "This place isn't built for war," he said, "but it will hold if we work together." Outside, shadows moved through the fog. 2 dark figures approached the entrance. Tall, armored, and silent. Their weapons were long, sharp, and glowing blue. Zanari hunters. One of them spoke through a comlink, voice like steel. "Ilari Ven, return the stolen data. We are authorized to extract it by force." Ilari stepped forward, eyes blazing. "I didn't steal anything. I destroyed what you tried to turn into evil." The second hunter raised his weapon. "Then you will be destroyed with it." Before they could take another step, Jalen triggered the first trap. A loud burst of energy exploded beneath their feet, throwing them backward. The second landed hard and rolled. The first stood quickly, slower now, scanning the perimeter. Jalen darted to the side with Ilari close behind. She pressed her palm, to a metal panel on the wall. Lights flared. A hidden defense field lit up in front of the entrance. Not perfect, but enough. "Buy me a minute," Ilari said. Jalen nodded. "You have 30 seconds. He stepped out and fired 2 pulse shots. One hit the ground. The second struck the first hunter's arm. The creature roared and stumbled but didn't fall. Behind him, Ilari opened the crystal on the main console. Her hands flew over the controls. Old codes, locked files, energy streams. Everything she once knew rushed back as her brain took over. Meanwhile, the second hunter broke through the shield halfway. Jalen gritted his teeth and grabbed a shock blade. Close combat wasn't his style, but he had no choice. They clashed, metal to metal, sparks flying. Jalen dodged a strike and kicked hard. The hunter fell, but not for long. Then Ilari shouted, "Now!" Jalen ducked. A blast of concentrated light burst from the console and struck both hunters at once. Their armor lit up. Systems fried. They screamed as the energy overwhelmed them, and then silence. They were down. Not dead, but disabled. Breathing hard, Jalen looked over. Ilari stood behind the console, her hands shaking. "You remembered everything," he said. "No," she replied. "I never forgot. I just stopped believing it mattered." He walked to her slowly, blood on his lip, a bruise forming near his eye. "You just saved us." "We saved each other," she said. Behind them, Mira ran and threw her arms around both of them. "I knew you'd win," she whispered. Jalen smiled and held her close, but in his heart, he knew this wasn't over. The Empire knew Ilari was alive. They wouldn't stop now, and yet something had changed. Ilari no longer wanted to run. Now she wanted to fight, not just to survive, but to build a future, and for the first time, she wasn't alone. The quiet was almost unreal. After days of fear, running, and battle, silence felt strange. Morning light poured through the cracks in the rock walls of the abandoned station, painting the floor with soft golden lines. Jalen sat slumped in a chair, eyes closed, one hand still resting on the handle of his weapon. He hadn't slept, but exhaustion had finally forced him to stop moving. Ilari opened her eyes slowly from the corner where she lay. Her wounds were wrapped, her breathing steady, and Mira's tiny form was curled up beside her. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was no alarm, no warning signal, no sound of boots approaching in the dark. She turned her head and saw Jalen still keeping watch even in his sleep. A quiet warmth spread through her chest. Mira stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes. She smiled when she saw her mother awake. "He didn't leave," she whispered. "No," Ilari said softly. "He didn't." Mira stood and tiptoed across the room. She grabbed a small bundle of cloth from their things and ran back with it, her eyes full of excitement. "I saved this for you." Ilari opened the cloth slowly. Inside was a simple necklace, made of wire rock and one small glowing bead, something Mira had made during their time hiding. A tiny thing, but in this moment it meant the world. Jalen woke with a start, hand reaching for his sidearm, but stopped when he saw Mira giggling beside her mother. "False alarm," he mumbled with a tired grin. Ilari looked at him, really looked, and something deep inside her cracked open. All this time she had told herself she was surviving for Mira, that her own life no longer mattered, that there was no place for someone like her in the world anymore. But now, watching Mira laugh, watching Jalen risk his life without question, something changed. She stood slowly, still weak but steady. Her voice was clear. "Jalen," he looked up at her. "You've given us more than safety. You gave us peace, trust, and something I thought I'd never have again, a reason to stop running." He stood too, unsure of what she was about to say. "I know I'm not easy to accept. I know my past is heavy, but if you'll have me, I would like to stay." Before Jalen could speak, Mira jumped between them with a huge smile. She said, "Yes, she wants to stay. Now you have to marry her." Jalen blinked in shock. Ilari's face turned red, but she didn't look away. He laughed, a real, deep laugh, and then looked at both of them. Well, it's not every day. A child proposes for her mom. Mira clapped her hands. So, will you? Jalen walked over to Ilari and gently took her hand. I don't need time to think. Yes, I want this. I want us. Ilari closed her eyes for a moment. Not from fear, but from relief. Something inside her finally settled. After years of pain, hiding, and doubt, she had found home. Not a place. A person. And in that moment, under the sunlight shining through old stone, an unlikely family was born. The fugitive, the mechanic, and the brave little girl who dared to ask a stranger, "Are you single?" It had all started with a knock on Heu. A door. Now it would continue as a new life together.